I didn't notice the music first. I noticed the bag. It was glossy white with a satin ribbon, the kind of gift you set near the cake so people can admire it, and it was pressed into my husband's chest by a woman who wasn't invited. Perfume followed her like a challenge, sharp and citrusy, cutting through the vanilla scent of cupcakes and the chatter of our guests. Brent's fingers touched the handles, then flinched back as if they burned. I heard someone laugh nervously, and then the room stilled 100 eyes landing on us. The ribbon slid against the paper with a whisper I still hear when the house is quiet. "Congratulations," she said loud enough to be disrespectful. I didn't ask her name because I already knew it. Before I go further, tell me where you're listening from tonight, and tap like and subscribe if stories about keeping your dignity speak to you. Your comments help these true family stories find the people who need them most. My name is Hillary, and if you'd met me a year ago, you would have said I had a steady, ordinary kind of happiness. I grew up in a house where bills were paid on time, casseroles showed up when neighbors were sick, and we signed our names in blue ink because my mother said it looked more hopeful. I carried those habits into adulthood, into the little life Brent and I built after I finished grad school and landed at a nonprofit that did more good than it did money. He was the talker at parties, the one who could make a room lean in while I remembered birthdays and made sure the dishwasher gasket got replaced before it failed. Together, we bought a modest 2-story in Homer Glen, all vinyl siding and lawn bags, and the kind of mailbox you repaint every few years. The house was ours, but it sat on a foundation I quietly poured. My parents were gone by then, and the small inheritance they left became our safety net when Brent's company made him a big promise in exchange for a relocation. I told myself leaving my job for his move was temporary, that I'd catch up once his hours settled, and the title meant what it was supposed to mean. "We're a team," he'd say, kissing my forehead while I logged into our bank and moved money to cover one more tuition payment, one more conference, one more trip he said would pay off later. I made spreadsheets, and he made speeches, and for a long time, that felt like balance. We tried for a baby quietly, the way some people try to quit a habit, hopeful and superstitious at the same time. When the second line finally bloomed on the test, I cried into a towel so I wouldn't wake him, then shook him anyway, because joy is better when someone witnesses it. He held me and promised the same promises. Time would open up, the stress would pass. He'd be present in all the ways that matter. I believed him because I wanted to, because wanting can sound like proof when you're tired enough. I painted trim between naps and kept a list on the fridge of tiny things that felt like progress. Crib-assembled car seat, checked pediatrician chosen. We were not wealthy, but we were careful, and careful can keep you afloat for years. Saturdays meant mulch and errands. Sundays meant chili simmering while he watched the last quarter. And weeknights meant me texting reminders about the joint account when the gas bill hit. He brought home wilted bouquets from supermarket runs, and I pressed the least tired blooms into a jar, telling myself that love isn't grand. Most of the time, it's maintenance. If you had asked me then what was wrong, I would have said nothing worth naming. What I meant was nothing I wanted to name out loud. The first wrong note was small, the kind you could ignore if you were committed to harmony. A second phone appeared with a shrug of work thing, and he started coming home with a cologne I didn't recognize, too bright for the man who usually wore nothing stronger than detergent. Emily noticed a cafe charge in Orland Park I couldn't place and made a joke that wasn't a joke, and I laughed it off because I didn't have proof, just a feeling that roamed the house at night like a draft. I told myself not to be suspicious while I folded onesies the size of kindness and circled appointment times on a paper calendar because I liked the scratch of pen on paper. I told myself the baby would settle us into better versions of ourselves. When the invitations went out for the shower, I addressed them with the same blue ink my mother favored and tied tiny bows until my thumbs ached. The women I love offered to bake and decorate, and I said yes to everything because saying yes felt steadier than thinking. The morning of, I blew my hair dry slowly watched my belly shift under my ribs, and told my daughter she was coming into a world that would know her name before anything else. I set out plates, checked the punch bowl, and taped a handwritten note to the front door, asking people to come around back because the kitchen smelled like sugar and cinnamon. I didn't expect a performance, not from anyone who shared our last name or had eaten at our table. But people reveal themselves when the room is bright, and the cameras are casual when they think a well-timed entrance can rearrange a life. The ribbon on that glossy bag scraped like a match being struck, and the spark it threw lit up everything I'd refused to see. I stood there with my palms damp and my back straight, and when she smiled at my husband instead of me, I learned the difference between panic and clarity. I didn't open the bag right away, but I knew what was inside. By the way, Brent's eyes slid toward the door, like there might still be time to outrun consequence. I took the handles anyway, felt the weight, and heard Emily's voice somewhere behind me tell someone to give the pregnant woman some air. The room held its breath, waiting to see whether I would cry or rage or break. I did none of those things. I looked at the woman with the citrus perfume and said as evenly as I could manage, "Why don't you tell me what you've brought into my home?" The bag was heavier than I expected, and the ribbon slipped against my palm as I pulled out the envelope. My hands shook not from nerves, but from the quiet weight of every person watching. Brent tried to intercept it, his voice low and frantic, but I had already broken the seal. One glance at the paper and the noise in the room changed. It wasn't celebration anymore. It was the sound of gossip unraveling before it even reached the door. Madison's chin tilted like she was ready for applause, but her eyes skipped too fast across the page. 0%. Not Brent's child. Not mine. Not the proof she thought she carried. She lifted her voice as if volume could change the truth, declaring Brent the father of her baby while insisting my own was a mistake. I didn't raise my voice in return. I told her to read again, to let the numbers sink into her rehearsed lines. When her smile broke, the silence carried sharper than any shouting. I stood in the center of the room, my belly tight under my dress, and knew that the story had shifted. She wasn't delivering a blow. She was delivering evidence, and not in the way she meant. Brent's palm hovered near my arm, as if he could still steer me away, still usher me into some quiet corner where his apologies might find space. I kept my shoulders straight and said no. We would talk when I was finished. Madison's voice cracked as she tried to frame me as the desperate one clinging to a man who already belonged to her. I turned toward Brent, my voice steady as I asked if that was true. He looked at the floor, and the answer came in the silence that followed. That was the moment my own silence ended. I folded the paper carefully, sliding it into my bag with a calmness that startled even me. My hand met his cheek in a single sharp motion. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I told him the truth. He had betrayed me during the months when I should have been most protected, and he had stood aside while another woman tried to humiliate me. Madison bristled and hissed about power she thought she held, but the paper she clutched was already useless. I walked past Brent without hesitation, my words quiet, but certain. He had invited destruction into our home, and now it would stay with him. I would carry only my child and my resolve. The cold air outside steadied me. Emily found me at the curb, her hand warm on my arm, as she told me there was no denying it anymore. Everyone had seen. Everyone knew. I didn't argue. For the first time, there was nothing left to defend. Later that night, the house was too loud, even in its silence. Brent paced upstairs while I sat at the dining table with a notebook. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked, and I began my list. Lawyer accounts, documents, deeds. One line after another, the outline of a plan that would not break me, but would free me. By midnight, I had called the bank. My inheritance account, the one piece of security he hadn't touched, was transferred into a place he couldn't reach. The joint credit card was frozen, both numbers disabled in the span of one phone call. My voice didn't tremble as I authorized it. The next morning, I stacked marriage papers, property titles, and savings statements into a folder and slid it into my tote. Emily answered the phone on the first ring, her breath sharp with hope. "Tell me you're leaving him," she said. "Not yet," I told her. "I'm dismantling." That afternoon, I sat across from a woman whose handshake was firm and whose eyes missed nothing. Carla Myers didn't waste time with sympathy. She asked if I wanted clean separation or blood. I said both. She nodded, pulling out a legal pad, her pen scratching across the paper as she mapped the order of attack. "Financial leverage first," she said. "Custody second. Do not tell him you've hired me." I promised I wouldn't. I left her office with a folder heavier than the one I brought and a sense of direction steadier than I'd felt in months. That evening, I packed not clothes or toys, but the things that mattered. Jewelry from my mother, documents with embossed seals, photographs I didn't trust to leave behind. Emily drove over, and we tucked the boxes into her trunk. When Brent came home late, the smell of whiskey clinging to his shirt, he muttered about work stress and poured himself another drink. I said nothing. The next morning, his call came from a gas station sharp with anger when his card was declined. I told him simply that I wasn't funding his lies anymore. He called me dramatic. I told him to buy groceries with his own card and hung up. That night, I locked the bedroom door. He pounded, demanding adult conversation. I stayed silent. By midweek, I had the house appraised. The realtor walked through with impressed remarks about the upgrades, already calculating how fast it might sell. I didn't commit to anything, but I needed the number in my hands before Brent tried to manipulate it. Carla prepared the first filings, divorce and custody together, reminding me not to serve him until the timing was ours. I agreed. Meanwhile, the video from the baby shower spread online. Madison's voice cracking my hand, striking Brent's cheek. Strangers laughed, whispered, commented. It didn't matter. Every share stripped away the mask he had worn in public. Every repost was a mirror held up to the man he really was. Saturday morning, he slammed into the kitchen, his face red, his voice carrying through the house. He shouted about rumors about his reputation, about how I was enjoying the spectacle. I met his eyes and told him I was surviving it. He had no script left, no polished excuses, only fists on counters and doors slammed too hard. I picked up my bag and walked past him, my voice calm, as I said the next time he saw me, it would be in a courtroom, not in this kitchen. The words tasted like steel, not bitterness. By the end of the week, the silence in our house shifted. Brent was still loud, still storming, still muttering under his breath, but the silence between us carried weight he couldn't push aside. I had moved money, gathered proof, hired counsel, and taken the first pieces of our life out from under his reach. He still thought he could outtalk me, outspin me, outlast me. But I knew better. Every number I saved, every document I copied, every lock I turned was another step toward the life he no longer controlled. And as I lay awake that night, my daughter turning inside me, I whispered that this was only the beginning. The cracks were no longer hidden. The betrayal wasn't just suspicion, it was fact, and fact demands consequence. The next morning, Brent moved through the kitchen like nothing had shifted. He poured coffee, made small noises about work and meetings, even asked if I needed anything from the store. I watched him from the doorway, one hand on my stomach, the other gripping the strap of my bag. He looked up, waiting for me to say something, anything, but I said nothing. The silence wasn't passive anymore. It was active, deliberate, and loud. I left before he could follow. The roads were quiet, and I drove with the windows cracked just enough to feel the cool air on my face. At every red light, I ran through the list in my head: lawyer, bank, title, receipts. I repeated it like a prayer, not because I was scared I'd forget, but because I needed to remember who I was becoming. I wasn't unraveling. I was reorganizing. That afternoon, I met Emily for lunch at a quiet diner just off Route 6. She slid into the booth across from me without a word and waited until the waitress had taken our orders before speaking. "You look different," she said. "Not tired, just still." I gave a small nod. Still was exactly the word for it. I hadn't cried since the shower. I hadn't screamed or begged. I just kept moving. We sat there with our iced teas sweating on the table between us, while I told her about Carla, about the accounts, about freezing the card. Emily didn't interrupt. She just listened and nodded, her eyes narrowing every time Brent's name came up. When I told her about the appraisal, she leaned back, arms crossed. "He has no idea," she said. "None," I replied. That was the point. By Friday, the tension in the house had shifted. Brent didn't yell anymore. He'd knock once on the bedroom door, then walk away. He left earlier, came home later, didn't mention the credit card again. But I saw the worry in the way he paced the hall after dark. I heard him muttering under his breath in the bathroom, his voice low and fast. He was spiraling, and I hadn't even served him yet. Late that night, I sat in the nursery on the edge of the rocking chair, folding baby clothes into neat piles. The room smelled like laundry and cedar from the drawers I'd lined. A little lamp glowed in the corner, casting soft light across the pale green walls. I picked up a tiny pair of socks and held them in my hands for a long time. They were soft, barely bigger than my thumb, and they made something tighten in my chest. I spoke to my daughter then in a whisper. "You won't grow up thinking silence means safety. You'll know the difference between love and control. I'll make sure of that." The socks slipped into the drawer, and I closed it gently. The next morning, the video from the baby shower showed up in my messages again, this time from a neighbor named Dana, who added a quiet note. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you." I didn't reply. I just saved the clip and added it to the file I was building on my computer. Screenshots of texts, photos of receipts, voicemail logs, all neatly organized by date. Carla had told me to document everything. I took her advice seriously. That same afternoon, a woman I barely knew from Brent's office sent Emily a screenshot of a group text. Madison's name appeared halfway down the thread, her words loud in their desperation. He said he was leaving her. He said the baby changed everything. He promised. The responses weren't kind. One coworker replied, "You sure he's even the dad?" Another simply said, "Yikes." The tone was clear. They weren't on her side. Emily forwarded it to me without comment. I saved it. Brent still hadn't mentioned Madison by name, but I could tell from the way he avoided eye contact that something between them had shifted. One night, as I walked into the kitchen for water, I saw him scrolling on his phone with his shoulders hunched and his jaw clenched. He didn't notice me. He muttered something and tossed the phone onto the counter. It slid and stopped just shy of the fruit bowl. I didn't pick it up. The next evening, he tried a different approach. He brought home takeout from my favorite Thai place and set the bag on the counter like it meant something. I didn't touch it. He stood nearby, arms crossed, waiting for me to say thank you. When I didn't, he asked, "Can we just talk?" I looked at the food, then at him. "No," I said. "You had months to talk. You chose everything else." He stood there a moment longer, then took the bag and walked it out to the trash. The screen door clattered behind him. That night, I locked the nursery door from the inside. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed this space to stay mine. I curled up on the daybed and stared at the ceiling while the baby shifted under my ribs. The house creaked, the wind tapped against the glass, and I breathed in the quiet until it felt like armor. Saturday morning, I woke early and drove out to the storage unit Carla had recommended. It was small, climate-controlled, and barely 10 minutes from Emily's house. I brought over the valuables I hadn't wanted to leave in the open, my grandmother's bracelet, the small stack of letters my father had written before he passed the original deed to the house. I placed everything in the lockbox carefully, then shut the lid and turned the key. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt methodical. That was enough. Back at the house, Brent was in the garage on a call. I stood just outside the door far enough that he couldn't see me close enough to hear. His voice was low and tense. "It's not what people think," he said. "The video's making it worse. I didn't plan any of that." A pause, then. "She won't talk to me. She's freezing me out." Another pause. "No. Madison's not helping. She's making it worse." I stepped back, let the door close behind me, and walked to the kitchen. I made a cup of tea and carried it to the back porch, letting the steam warm my hands while the breeze moved through the trees. I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew where this was heading. By Sunday, Madison had deleted her Instagram. Her name stopped showing up in comments. One of her co-workers posted a meme of the DNA test photo with the words, "Zero drama, nope, 100%. The caption underneath read, "Monday's gonna be awkward." Emily showed it to me over brunch, and I didn't laugh, but I didn't look away either. Brent spent most of that day in the bedroom, blinds drawn, lights off. I didn't check on him. Instead, I spent the afternoon reorganizing the pantry, wiping down shelves, labeling jars. It felt good to touch something real, something clean. That night, he knocked softly on the nursery door. I opened it just wide enough to see his face. He looked tired, unsure. "I miss us," he said. I met his eyes. "There is no us, Brent. Just me and her." I placed my hand on my stomach as she shifted steady and alive beneath my ribs. He nodded once, then turned away. I closed the door gently behind him. Brent barely spoke to me for 2 days after that knock on the nursery door. When he passed me in the hallway, his eyes dropped like he was trying to appear wounded, maybe even sorry, but it never quite landed. I moved through the house like it wasn't ours anymore, just a structure I was counting down from drawer by drawer, file by file. I slept in the nursery, kept the door locked, kept a notebook on the dresser with everything Carla told me to document. Times, dates, missed payments, changes in his tone. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was gathering. Quietly. Steadily. On Wednesday, Emily stopped by after her shift. She brought takeout and sat across from me at the kitchen table while I scrolled through emails from the mortgage lender. She didn't push or ask questions, just waited while I finished typing. Then she said, "We need to get you out of this house." I looked around the room at the scuff on the baseboard, the dent in the fridge door, the crooked light fixture above the sink. Things I used to fuss over. Now they barely registered. "Not yet," I said. "I'm not walking away until every piece of this is mine." She nodded and pulled out a flash drive. Screenshots from someone at Brent's office. I plugged it into my laptop and clicked through the folder. Text chains, hotel bills, photos of Brent and Madison leaving a downtown hotel. The timestamps fell right in the middle of my second trimester. My name wasn't on any of the documents, but I could feel myself written between every line. I copied everything into my legal folder. Then I backed it up twice, once to a cloud drive, once to a second flash drive. I tucked inside the lining of my coat closet. That night, Brent sat in the dark living room, while the television played a muted basketball game. I passed by on my way upstairs and saw the flicker of light across his face. His eyes glazed, his mouth slightly open. An empty beer bottle sat on the floor by his foot. I didn't say a word, just climbed the stairs and closed the door behind me. The following afternoon, Carla called. "I've reviewed the documentation. You're not just ahead. You're insulated. Keep it that way." I told her about the hotel receipts and the screenshots. She didn't respond right away, but I could hear the satisfaction in her tone when she finally said, "Good. That's the kind of thing that makes people fold." Friday was warm, the kind of spring day that tricks you into opening the windows, even if the chill isn't quite gone. I spent the morning going through the basement, sorting through boxes Brent had never unpacked from our last move. I found old receipts, credit card statements, with strange restaurant charges, a small stack of business cards I didn't recognize. I photographed everything and sealed them in a manila envelope. Evidence wasn't just about the present, it was about the patterns. Around 3, Brent stormed through the front door, his tie half loosened, his face red. "You've turned the neighborhood against me," he snapped. I stood in the foyer with a laundry basket in my arms. "You did that yourself," I said. He threw his keys onto the entry table, knocking over the ceramic bowl we used for mail. "People at work are talking. Someone leaked that shower video to the VP. I didn't flinch." "Maybe you should have thought about that before letting your girlfriend make a scene in front of our families." He stepped closer. "You don't get to act innocent in all this. You've been scheming." I met his stare, voice calm. "I've been documenting. That's not scheming. That's surviving." He held up his hands like he was trying to settle the air between us. "Can't we just stop?" I blinked once, then turned toward the stairs. It stopped when you chose her. That evening, I took a walk around the block. The air smelled like lilacs and mulch. I moved slowly, hand resting on the top of my belly, my body heavier than it had been just a week before. As I passed the corner lot, a woman I didn't recognize called out from her porch. "You okay?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "I will be." She lifted her glass in a silent toast, and I kept walking. The next morning, I started packing small items from the nursery, things we didn't need just yet. A few books, diaper boxes, the bottle sterilizer. I placed them gently into storage bins and labeled them in black marker. Emily arrived later with a second key to her house and a garage code. "If you need out fast," she said, "you don't have to call first." I hugged her tightly and tucked the key into my wallet. By Monday, the video from the restaurant had started circulating. Brent and Madison at the bar. My voice calling him a cautionary tale. His father's voicemail playing over the speakers. Carla called again and asked for a copy. "It may never see a courtroom," she said, "but it helps." Madison's name was everywhere, mocked, memed, captioned beneath screenshots of the DNA results. She deactivated every account within 24 hours. Brent tried to fight back with a Facebook post. Long, polished, performative. Blaming stress. Hinting at emotional instability. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The comment section did it for me. "We were there. You brought the mistress to her baby shower. You're not the victim here." The post came down by morning. That night, he found me in the kitchen making tea. "Do you even care what happens to me?" he asked, voice small. I set the kettle down and looked at him. "I care about what happens to our daughter. You chose what happens to you." He leaned against the counter, eyes searching. "You're really going through with this?" I nodded. "Already am." His mouth moved like he had more to say, but the words didn't come. I left the tea steeping and walked past him to the nursery. I closed the door behind me and slid the lock into place. 2 days later, Carla emailed the initial draft of the filing. Divorce. Custody. Division of assets. All outlined in clean, sharp language. I read it twice, then signed where she indicated. That afternoon, I booked a P.O. box and updated all my banking and medical info to the new address. I didn't tell Brent. I didn't owe him that. Friday came with wind and low gray clouds. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the trees bend along the sidewalk. Brent's car pulled into the driveway late, closer to midnight. He didn't come inside right away, just sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel. I watched him for a full 10 minutes before he finally stepped out, shoulders hunched, collar pulled up against the cold. He didn't see me standing there. The next morning, I emailed Carla one sentence. Let's serve him next week. Brent was served on a Tuesday morning. Carla sent me a short text just after 10. It's done. He didn't take it well. I didn't need the details. I could imagine his reaction clearly: rage first, denial next, then the sudden scramble to regain control. What he didn't know was that control had never been his to keep. Not anymore. That night, he came home later than usual. His footsteps were louder, his movements sharper. I stayed upstairs with the nursery door closed, organizing folded clothes and checking the baby monitor I'd already installed, even though she hadn't arrived yet. The house creaked under his pacing. I listened without reacting. Let the walls hear him. I'd heard enough. The next morning, Brent tried soft. He caught me in the kitchen while I poured cereal and asked if we could talk. Just 10 minutes, he said, voice lower than usual. We don't need lawyers. We can still fix this. I didn't look up. You were handed every chance to fix this, I said. You let them all expire. He didn't answer. Just stood there while I finished my breakfast in silence. A moment later, he grabbed his keys and left, slamming the front door hard enough to rattle the window. By Thursday, word had gotten out. Not from me, but from Brent himself, or rather his behavior. He tried to treat his team to lunch at a trendy spot near his office, and the company card declined. The waitress had to return the check twice before someone else paid. I heard the story from Emily, who got it from a coworker's wife, the same woman who had seen Madison crash my baby shower. By that evening, my phone lit up with a string of texts from Brent. Why are you doing this? You're making it worse. We can still work something out. I didn't reply. I saved the screenshots and forwarded them to Carla, who responded simply, He's slipping. Let him. Over the weekend, Madison vanished from social media. Her Instagram disappeared. Her name was scrubbed from company directories. One of Emily's friends, who worked in HR for a nearby firm, messaged me a meme making the rounds. Madison's face pasted next to a fake perfume ad titled 0% for when he's not the father. The caption read, Mistress with no receipts. I didn't laugh, but I saved it. For the record. Brent's behavior shifted after that. He tried charm again. Made coffee one morning, bought groceries the next, hovered around the kitchen while I folded the mail. We had something real, he said once, placing a carton of eggs in the fridge. I didn't correct him. I didn't say we had something real. I just let the silence answer for me. By midweek, the appraisal for the house had come through. Carla and I reviewed the numbers together in her office, and she laid out the next step. We keep it under your name, she said. The inheritance angle helps. The judge will see it as a non-marital asset if we make the right case. I signed where she pointed, heart steady in my chest. Brent came home that night to a house colder than he remembered. The bedroom was still locked. The guest room, once barely used, was now his by default. I could hear him muttering behind the door, hear the squeak of the bed frame, the flicker of late-night television trying to soothe his ego. But none of it reached me. I was done listening. Friday morning, I took the preliminary financial filings to the county clerk's office. The woman behind the counter recognized my name from the viral clip. She didn't say anything, just looked at me for a long moment and nodded. If you ever need to resubmit, I'm here, she said quietly. I thanked her and tucked the stamped papers into my file. That night, Brent cornered me in the hallway. "I know what you're doing," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had that low simmer that used to make me retreat. "You think you're gonna take everything. You're not." I didn't flinch. "I'm not taking anything that wasn't already mine," I said. "You just didn't notice when you stopped contributing." His face twitched like he wanted to yell but didn't know how to make it land. Instead, he stepped back and muttered, "You're cold." I walked past him and locked the nursery behind me. By Sunday, the restaurant video had hit 1 million views. People clipped different parts of it, my voice calling him a cautionary tale, the stunned silence of the room, the sound of his father's voicemail playing aloud. One post had nearly 100,000 likes. The caption read, "When she said, 'You invited destruction,' and gave it a chair." I felt that. I hadn't planned for this part, the public shaming, but I didn't turn from it either. Brent tried to bury it with a LinkedIn post about resilience through public scrutiny. It backfired immediately. Every comment shredded him. "You cheated on your pregnant wife and got caught on tape. You didn't face scrutiny, you caused it. Delete this and get a job." He deleted the post within a day, but the screenshots lived on. That week, I filed for sole custody. Carla walked me through every line. "He hasn't attended a single doctor's appointment," she noted. "He's shown no emotional support, no co-parenting effort." I nodded. "I want full decision-making authority," I said, "and I want visitation supervised." She didn't blink. "We'll get it." Brent noticed the change almost immediately. His access to the accounts had already been stripped, but now the house was off limits for refinancing the car title flagged in the filing, and his lawyer, who I'm sure cost him more than he wanted to spend, began sending stiff, frantic emails. Carla reviewed each one with the same calm. "He's reacting. Don't respond directly. Let it go through me." By Friday, his co-workers had stopped inviting him out. He sat alone at lunch, or so I heard. Madison had quit her job and left town. Her name disappeared from group chats. She was, as Emily put it, radioactive. Brent, meanwhile, still walked around like a man confused by his own collapse. He hadn't connected the dots yet. He thought he was being attacked when really he was just being seen. That weekend, Emily took me out to dinner. Just the two of us. We picked a place downtown, crowded, lively, full of people I didn't know. Halfway through the meal, I felt eyes on me. A woman at the next table leaned over. "You're her, right? The baby shower video." I nodded slowly, unsure what to expect. She reached for my hand. "Good for you," she said. Some of us watched that and finally felt like we weren't crazy. I smiled, but it didn't reach all the way to my chest. Not yet. I still had more to finish. When I got home that night, Brent was sitting on the porch, shirt, wrinkled socks, mismatched. "I'm broke," he said, not looking up. "Madison's gone. My job's on the line. You've turned everyone against me." I stood at the bottom of the steps. "You turned them against yourself," I said. "They just needed permission to stop pretending." He wiped his face and mumbled something I didn't catch. I stepped past him, hand resting on the curve of my stomach as I reached the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't speak again. I just closed it gently behind me. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Beige walls, worn wooden benches, and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. It didn't feel like a place where lives could split in two, but that's exactly what it was. Brent arrived 10 minutes late, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit. His tie was loose. His jaw clenched the moment he saw me. Carla sat beside me, calm and crisp in a navy blazer. She didn't smile, didn't offer small talk, just handed me a copy of the filing and said quietly, "We've got more than enough." I nodded, my hand resting on the curve of my belly, steady beneath the fabric of my dress. I hadn't worn black to mourn. I wore it to mark the end. Brent's lawyer looked flustered, flipping through papers he clearly hadn't studied long enough. The judge entered with a clipboard and glasses perched on the tip of her nose. When she asked Brent to explain why he hadn't contributed financially during my pregnancy, he tried to lead with emotion. "I lost my job," he said, voice softer than usual, "due to online harassment. The internet destroyed my reputation." Carla didn't wait to be prompted. She stood slowly and spoke with the kind of sharp precision that doesn't leave room for debate. "Your Honor, the defendant's termination was due to documented misconduct. We have emails, video evidence, screenshots of multiple affairs, and misuse of company funds. The online response was a result of his own behavior, not fabrication." The judge's expression didn't change, but Brent shifted in his seat, pulling at his collar, like the room had grown hotter. I stayed still, breathing deeply, one hand folded over the other. The judge ruled temporary custody in my favor, sole decision-making authority until after the baby was born. Visitation supervised. No exceptions. Brent's mouth opened as if to object, but nothing came out. When we moved to finances, Carla laid out the trail. My inheritance funded our house. My money paid for his MBA. I had proof of covering joint expenses while he spent on hotels and dinners that had nothing to do with work. The judge reviewed the documents, flipping page after page before ordering temporary spousal support. Brent's jaw locked. "I don't even have a job," he said, almost choking on it. The judge didn't flinch. "Then you'd better find one." That night I went home and filed the paperwork to transfer the house into a protected trust. Carla guided me through every step. "You're doing this the right way," she said. "No yelling, no mess, just documentation and timing." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Brent's spiral had already begun. The fallout outside the courtroom hit faster than I expected. His father called that same evening. He spoke slowly, his voice lower than I'd ever heard. "I want you to know I'm ashamed he carries my name," he said. "You'll have my support during the divorce. He'll have nothing from me." I thanked him, though it didn't bring relief. Just finality. Later that week, Brent's younger brother sent a short text. "You're doing the right thing. He burned every bridge. I warned him. Do what you need to do." Even his mother, who used to insist he was just under pressure, stopped defending him. A neighbor overheard her at the grocery store saying, "That's not my son. Not anymore." Brent didn't speak to me for 3 days, but I could hear him on the phone at night, pacing the hall, whispering about lawyers and lies. I didn't answer when he knocked. I didn't respond when he left notes by the door. Emily helped me move more documents into secure folders. She printed backup copies and kept them in a fireproof box at her place. "You're getting close," she said. "He's unraveling." The second hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the days leading up to it, Brent tried one last public stunt. He posted a video to a local Facebook group, rambling red-eyed, claiming I was trying to take his child, that I was turning people against him. Within hours, someone leaked new screenshots. Texts between him and another woman, not Madison. This one was newer. Messages sent while I was still in my 3rd trimester. "She doesn't satisfy me anymore," one read. "You're different." The woman had posted them herself, tagging my name. Brent took the video down, but the damage was permanent. People reposted the texts alongside footage from the baby shower and the restaurant confrontation. One clip, his father's voicemail, was shared on a TikTok with over 2 million views. The caption read, "Even his own dad had enough." The second hearing was colder. Brent came in looking thinner, his lawyer more prepared, but the material hadn't changed. Carla walked the judge through every thread: financial neglect, marital misconduct, abandonment during pregnancy. Brent tried to counter with statements about emotional manipulation, but he couldn't back them with anything. The judge cut through it all. "How many medical appointments did you attend with your wife?" the judge asked. Brent hesitated. "1, maybe 2. "And how many did you miss?" Silence. The gavel came down. Sole custody awarded to the mother with supervised visitation to continue. No unsupervised contact until postnatal review. Brent slumped forward like someone had knocked the wind from him. I didn't gloat. I signed the papers quietly, my fingers steady. The financial ruling followed. The judge confirmed the house belonged to me. His claim to shared equity was denied. The accounts were frozen, my portion secured in a separate trust. Brent's car, once a leased luxury sedan, was repossessed within 2 weeks when he missed another payment. His severance package, what was left of it, was seized in part for support. That evening, I sat in the nursery folding onesies into drawers that smelled like lavender. My daughter rolled under my ribs, kicking against the side of my belly. I pressed my hand to the spot and whispered, "It's done." Then I opened my laptop and updated the custody schedule with the court order. Every line had a purpose. Every detail was mine to keep now. I didn't hear from Brent for several days after that, but then a long email arrived, rambling, defensive, full of blame. He called me cold, manipulative, ungrateful. Said Madison had lied to him. Said the internet ruined him. Said his father betrayed him. At the end he wrote, "You'll regret this when our daughter asks where her father is." I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Carla and saved it in my folder. That weekend, I threw a small gathering at Emily's house. Just her, a few friends, and me. No balloons, no spectacle, just people who stayed. I sat outside while they passed around paper plates of pasta salad and lemonade. My hands rested on my belly, my eyes soft from exhaustion, but steady. When the sun started to set, Emily leaned over and said, "He's going to come crawling back. You know that, right?" I nodded. "He already is," I said. "But I'm not the same person he left." The morning I filed the final paperwork, the air felt different. Lighter, maybe. The kind of stillness that follows a storm when the sky hasn't cleared yet, but you know the worst has passed. Carla slid the papers across her desk and tapped once. "This starts the clock," she said. "Once it's final, he's officially on the outside looking in." I didn't hesitate. I signed my name cleanly once, then again. No shaking, no second thoughts. Brent was served 3 days later at the apartment he'd moved into across town. I wasn't there, but Emily's friend who lived in the same building told her he slammed the door so hard the frame cracked. By that evening, his texts were flooding my phone. Long messages jumping between apologies and accusations. "We don't need lawyers. You're turning my life upside down. Don't do this to us." But there was no us. There hadn't been for a long time. Carla and I combed through every item on our checklist: property titles, bank records, insurance, car registration, custody conditions. "We go for full custody," she reminded me. "Given his behavior and absence, we'll make it stick." I nodded. Brent hadn't shown up for half my prenatal appointments, hadn't bought a single item for the baby. He barely asked how I was doing. We secured the house under my name. My inheritance had funded the down payment, the closing costs, and half the upgrades. Brent's name came off the title before he even realized it was an option. The hearing was scheduled. Temporary orders stood. We weren't negotiating anymore. The first hearing was rough, but not for me. Brent showed up wearing a suit that didn't quite fit, like it had been borrowed or bought secondhand. His lawyer looked tired already, like someone who knew he was fighting a losing battle. The judge asked direct questions. Brent fumbled every one. He blamed online slander for his job loss. Carla calmly walked the court through screenshots and records, multiple affairs, financial misconduct, reputation damage, all tied to his own actions. "These are not rumors," she said. "These are receipts. We won temporary full custody that day. Decision-making power stayed with me. Visitation, if any, would be supervised by court order." Brent's face fell when the words left the judge's mouth. He looked around like someone waiting to be rescued. But no one stood up for him, not even his own attorney. When we moved to finances, Carla laid out the rest. Brent had relied on my inheritance to fund most of his adult life, his degree, his car, his travel. Invoices, wire transfers, and signed contracts were all logged and dated. The judge ordered temporary spousal support in my favor. Brent clenched his jaw and muttered, "I don't even have a job right now." The judge didn't blink. "Then you'd better get one." He left the courtroom red-faced and silent. The fallout came quickly. That evening, his father called me. We hadn't spoken since the voicemail that went viral. He sounded quieter now, more worn. "I meant what I said," he told me. "He'll get nothing from me. You have my full support." I thanked him, though his words left a weight I didn't expect. There's no satisfaction in watching someone be disowned. Just the recognition that some bridges don't rebuild. Later that night, Brent's younger brother texted me directly. "He did this to himself," it said. "You don't owe him anything." Even his mother, the one who once clung to the belief that Brent was just stressed, just misunderstood, stopped pretending. Emily overheard her at a grocery store telling a friend she no longer recognized her son. She walked right past him in the frozen food aisle without speaking. I started receiving messages from people who had once smiled politely at our holiday parties. One woman, a friend of a friend, sent me a message that simply read, "We all knew something wasn't right. No one knew it was this bad." "I'm sorry." I didn't answer, but I saved it. Meanwhile, Carla advised me to keep logging everything. "This isn't about drama," she said. "It's about consistency. Evidence." I documented every call Brent made, every slammed door, every missed deadline or emotional outburst. It wasn't revenge. It was preparation. On Thursday night, I heard Brent in the hallway outside the nursery. His voice low and tense on the phone. "She's painting me as a villain. I never lied to Madison. I told her I wasn't ready to leave." He paused, then added, "She's threatening to tell my boss everything." I didn't need to eavesdrop any longer. I'd heard enough. The next morning, Madison did exactly what he feared. She posted a shaky Instagram story sitting close to Brent on a couch, with smudged eyeliner and a mournful voice. "Brent loves me," she said. "He's been planning to leave her for months. The baby is ours." People don't know the whole story. But within hours, someone leaked messages between her and a friend. In them, Madison bragged that Brent would never leave me, that she didn't want him long-term, just his financial support. The screenshots were brutal. One thread had her calling Brent emotionally weak and convenient. The internet turned quickly. Hashtags trended #Madison Math for the 0% DNA test. Brent the rent for his financial dependence and #cautionary. Brent quoting the line I had said at the restaurant. My voice had become a meme. But the worst wasn't the jokes. It was the silence that followed. Brent tried to clean up the mess with a post on LinkedIn, a long article about navigating adversity and holding on to integrity during hard times. He even wrote a paragraph about supporting my wife during pregnancy. But the comments tore it apart. "You cheated on her while she was pregnant. You let your mistress crash her baby shower." Integrity. "Sir, delete this." He took it down within 24 hours, but it was too late. Screenshots circulated fast. Carla called me that afternoon. "You don't even need me to dismantle him," she said. "The internet's doing it for free." Still, Brent couldn't help himself. A few days later, he gave a recorded interview to a local news station and attempt to spin the narrative. "I've made mistakes," he said, "but my wife is exaggerating. The truth is more complicated." That was the word he used, complicated. But receipts speak louder than spin. The same day the segment aired, new leaks surfaced. Hotel bills, Photos. Even more messages this time between Brent and a third woman. Screenshots showed him texting during the second trimester, promising her a life he couldn't get at home. The woman posted them herself, tagging my name, saying I didn't know she was pregnant. I wouldn't have touched him if I had. The comments were relentless. Complicated. One post stitched his interview with a slow scroll through the receipts. The caption said, "Complicated is code for I got caught." By the end of that week, Brent's employer issued a formal statement. "We take allegations of misconduct seriously. Effective immediately, Brent Ferris is no longer employed with our firm. He was unemployed, publicly discredited, and entirely exposed. And I had said very little. The truth had been enough." Madison vanished after that, deleted her accounts, quit her job. I heard whispers that she left town entirely. I didn't care where she went. Her part in the story was over. Brent, though, stayed in the ruins. One night, he showed up outside Emily's house again, shouting into the dark. "They're ruining me!" Emily called the cops without hesitation. He scattered like a teenager caught past curfew. That night, I lay in bed with one hand on my belly and the other resting across my heart. I whispered to the daughter growing inside me, "We're safe now. He can't hurt us anymore." And for the first time in months, I believed it. Because Brent hadn't just lost me, he'd lost everything. His career, his reputation, his illusions. And now, the only thing left was the silence he'd never learned how to sit with. The last time I saw Brent, it was early spring. The courthouse steps were still slick from last night's rain. I was coming out after finalizing one last round of paperwork, custody, financial terms, property reassignment. Everything was done. No more hearings. No more shared decisions. No more shared name. He was sitting on the low wall near the flagpole, hands folded, a man with nothing to hold on to. He didn't speak right away. Just looked up as I passed, eyes-rimmed red suit, wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "You got everything," he said, quietly, almost like it surprised him. I paused, not because I owed him a response, but because I had waited years for this moment. "No," I told him. "I rebuilt everything. You're not the same thing as everything." He didn't follow me, didn't speak again, just sat there as I walked to my car and left him behind in every way that mattered. By the time our daughter was born, Brent had all but vanished. No visits, no gifts, no interest. The court had set terms, he never even tried to meet them. And I stopped waiting. I had my name back, my home, my peace. And when I looked down at my baby girl in those first few hours wrapped in a hand-knit blanket from my aunt, I felt a kind of fullness I hadn't known in years. We named her Lila Grace. Emily was in the room with me. She cried harder than I did. Later, she told me it felt like watching someone step out of a long, dark hallway into the sunlight. "You came back," she said. "And you're not just surviving, you're shining." My parents came around too slower, more cautiously. My mother apologized first, then my father, though it took him longer. We had long talks over tea, not about Brent, about me, about all the ways they'd missed how much I was carrying. They'd believed the picture-perfect version of our life right up until it cracked open. But they listened now, and they didn't look away anymore. Carla and I stayed in touch after everything settled. She called me her quietest client and her loudest victory. On my daughter's first birthday, I mailed her a framed photo, Lila in a flower crown frosting on her nose. I included a note, "You helped give her this life. Thank you." She called me crying. As for the house, I renovated the kitchen like I'd always dreamed. Took out the old fixtures, brought in soft oak cabinets, and a window bench that caught the morning light. Lila and I sat there every weekend with picture books and cereal bowls, her small feet swinging under the table. It became our favorite place in the world. And I found myself again slowly. I went back to teaching part-time, picked up my art journals, started smiling at strangers in line at the grocery store without flinching. Some people still whispered, others reached out with kindness. But I didn't need anyone's version of my story anymore. I had lived it, and I had survived it. The truth is, I didn't set out for revenge. I didn't plot to destroy anyone. I only wanted to live with dignity and be believed when I said something wasn't right. And when no one listened at first, I kept going anyway. I built the proof. I stood up brick by brick until the walls around his lies couldn't hold. In the end, Brent wasn't taken down by scandal. He was undone by truth. And I didn't shout it. I didn't scream. I just refused to be quiet one more day. Now when Lila runs barefoot through our backyard, giggling like sunlight itself, I feel the kind of peace that doesn't need an audience. We are safe. We are whole. And the past, well, it's not forgotten. But it no longer writes the ending.